Hi ladies and gentlemen, today is January 6th, 2015. Hard to believe. I know I haven't been up in a while, and I hope you all had a nice month in December. However you look at it, however you view it, what you celebrate, what you don't, I at least hope that you had good times with family and friends and the things that really matter in life. And that of course is the love of our fellow man. Well, I'm going to try to be a little upbeat in this and try not to be too verbose or windy. But of course today, the House of Representatives, the Republicans, voted to keep John Boehner as I prefer to call it, I think that's really how you say his name, Speaker of the House again, after all that's transpired. Back in November, I made a video called The Three Stooges about Boehner, McConnell, and McCain, and really everybody up there on the Hill. But those three really do the job of being the Three Stooges. And even as I said, that's an insult to the original Three Stooges comedy trio. But I think the name fits for these guys, because that's what they are. They're stooges. They've been paid to do what they do by interests other than the interests of the American people and the oath that they made to the Constitution of the United States. And that goes for everybody in government at this point, as far as I can tell. Okay? Well, and it's not just Obamacare. There are pros and cons on that, of course, and people being able to get health care and all that, but really, it's much deeper than that. It's much deeper than the immigration problem. And of course, as you know, I'm not as concerned so much about people coming here as I am that we're leaving our borders wide open for influences that we really don't want here. And by that I mean people like the Zetas, stuff like that. But be that as it may, it's widespread. Fast and Furious, the IRS scandal, NSA spying, the CIA spying on the Senate, and of course all of us. I hope you realize that. And I could go on and on and on. Benghazi, and nobody ever gets in trouble. Nobody ever goes to jail. But they want to put you in jail for very minor things. They want to watch you 24 hours a day to make sure that you're doing what they tell you to do, whether it's right or wrong. Well, I could beat that dead horse for a long time. I want to read something to you real quick. I had a speech prepared for a group that I was going to talk to, and then that fell through. And I want to tell you that basically it was going to start off with the framers of the Declaration of Independence, the signers of that, and what happened to them for making the stand that they did. And I'm not going to go through all those names and tell you what happened to all those men, but a lot of them didn't end up with what they started with. They lost their families, their wives and their children to death or whatever, the British killing them or whatever, their fortunes taken, and they themselves even hung on occasion or whatever. I was going to go through the whole list, but I'm not going to do that. You can look that up yourself. What I do want to do is read this to you right quick before I tell you about this thing with Boehner today. Now, again, being Speaker of the House and violating every promise that they ever made. Talking about the framers that lost everything, even their lives on occasion. If you did not understand what I just told you, devoid of the fairy tales, you do not comprehend the magnitude of what you claim to undertake. Indeed, you are not worthy of it. There are those who want to destroy the soul of men. Souls of men, I guess, would be the better term, grammatically correct. The Creator endowed us with a consciousness, a conscience, to guide our way. The evil ones seek to disengage or destroy that conscience, and in the end, all mankind. But Lucifer, and I use that name just because that's what everybody knows, had long misunderstood that God seeks the salvation and eternal life of the individual. Each and every individual. Those who will take and perfect the law of liberty unto themselves and grant it to others. Indeed, the secret of our quest is not even in the seeming victory over evil in this world, if we seek that. that evil that seeks the demise of liberty. But in the quest attributed to Jesus, that quote by him, evident in all experiences of mankind and manifest always to them at all times, that there is no greater love than this, than to be willing to lay your life down for your fellow man. It is not talk, but realization of the awful situation we are in and the resolve to stand against it at all costs. Kind of rough because it's kind of hard to see in the light here. But I wanted to give that and say this. I said long ago that I see no hope in turning this nation around back to the principles upon which it was founded. Again, like so many other commentators have said, it's not perfect. It's not run by God. It's run by men. But the people should have been better watchdogs over those that they put into positions that can turn into positions of power. The people are the ultimate power. And that was the concept, but it's been reversed. And I'm not going to sit here and preach to what happened, because if you don't know by now, you'll never know. You never want to wake up. You never want to open your eyes. You just want to go watch the NFL, drink your beer, watch your soap operas, learn about the Kardashians, whatever. The new Idol guy, whatever. And I know most of the people that look at my channel aren't like that, but I've got to say that for those who don't really realize that their ignorance, their ignoring of the issues that are going on today, they're not going to get past it without being injured and contributing to the injury of others because they refuse to stand and say, no, I'm not going to let that happen. If it's something they don't want you to know about, they clamp the national security thing on it, just like the British have done with the pedophile rings that reach all the way up into the royal family. And that's going on here too. You have the Franklin cover-up. You have the situation now with President Clinton and the situation down there in the Caribbean. I mean, and we've all known about this stuff, and now here it comes out, and it's like, so what? Most people get outraged about it for 5 minutes and move on to the next thing. It's indicative of the disease of this country and indeed of the world. So getting back about what I said here, I'm afraid that this nation is long lost. The contents of the bottle are not water on the label, and I don't see any way of saving it. So as I've said for a long time, we need small groups of people that we can count on, get the commodities that you can trade, because you can't eat or drink gold and silver. I mean, it's all right to have a little bit of that, but the fact of the matter is you need to think about bartering in commodities that you need, that you use to make other things, stuff like that. And I know a lot of us are limited to that because the government's made sure that our assets have been shrinking over the last few years, sometimes totally. But I just wanted to say that and give this introduction, which has turned kind of long. I'm going to make probably only 2 or 3 more videos, and I know you've heard me say that before, but you get tired of sending this warning voice out. Pete Santilli said, no, Roy, you can never stop talking out. Well, but there are different ways to do that, and I know I've said that before too, but let me get to the point here. The point is this. There's an event that's coming up within the next few months, and it's in Nevada. Now, the state of Utah has already passed, the legislature and the governor signed it about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, a law stating that the feds have to give up all the lands that they control in the state that aren't tied to military installations, museums, things like that. Actually, they're not even supposed to run museums, but at any rate, we're talking about the large swaths of land. And that basically, the deadline for that passed on the 31st of December. And what's going to happen with that? Well, most politicians don't do anything. We've seen that with Boehner, right? They make a bunch of claims, they make a bunch of threats, and then nothing ever happens. The guilty are still guilty and go out and keep doing their guilty deeds, and nobody goes after them. Okay, but the point is that Utah's done that, and there are several other states that are in the process. Nevada is teetering. Some of their legislators want to do it, some don't. You got a governor who's resistant to it. You had the whole Nevada Bundy Ranch standoff last April over the BLM's atrocities there in southern Nevada against innocent people that are just trying to eke a living out of the land, coming up with some absurd thing about tortoises. Well, now, of course, President Obama, and I use that term loosely, signed the Area of Critical Environmental Concern executive order, and I guess completed 3 million acres total with all the stuff they've got going on of taking it away of use by the American people, especially Nevadans. Well, part of that area is the Bundy Ranch, okay? And part of what this bill says apparently is that they can't even do ranching there. So the Bundys will be out again. So here we are faced with basically the same situation we were last year, but in a larger situation, a much larger, much bigger. Well, folks, what's going to happen there in southern Nevada at this second standoff will be the barometer by which you can determine the fate of the American people and of this nation. The destiny of this nation was sold, or the good destiny was sold a long time ago with some of the horrible things we've done, the unjust wars, the millions and millions of abortions of innocents, and I could go on and on. Stealing of property of people under the guise of taxes, bank failures, and big banks can get forgiven their debts, but not the little people. How dare you grind the faces of my people? How dare you? Ever read that? Well, at any rate, what's going to happen here in southern Nevada, probably in April, March or April, somewhere in that time frame. It's supposed to be January 10th, but I understand they've backed that off, primarily because, and you're not fooling me, federal government, you never want to do military operations in the wintertime if you can avoid it. Okay, I wasn't going to bring that up, but I'll just say it. That's the real reason why you backed off, not because you're changing anything, any of your goals, or want to negotiate or discuss. It's just that you know that you need to be able to operate, and you don't want to do it in weather you can't count on. So at any rate, this is going to happen sometime in the March-April time frame. And all I'm saying to everyone out there is that this will be the defining moment, because bringing scriptures back into that, Moses was told and the people of Israel to go possess the land. As far as the American people are concerned, if you don't claim your land, if you don't possess it and claim it, and ask God to stand there with you, dedicating it to Him, you're going to lose everything. This is not supposed to be a nation run by a king other than the King of the universe. Well, I'll do some follow-ups. You can depend that I'm going to bring Brian Thornton back into this as well, because we are going to do some more ordinances, some more rituals, if you like. But if you can, no, you should, no, you must, if you are a Nevadan in particular, or if you're in any of the western states, or anywhere for that matter, but I'm putting emphasis on those people because this is the land that they should be possessing. If you want to remain in this land, if you want to have it for your posterity, if you want to have it in liberty and in virtue, you need to come make a stand in some fashion in Nevada. Not northern Nevada, southern Nevada, Clark County in particular, in one way or another. We cannot allow the government to do this without opposing it in some fashion. The best getting God involved, because despite what you might think, He is the God of the land. I'll be back with you out here for now.